If you search for wedding venues in the Phoenix area, you are going to find a lot of lists. Some are going to be based on reviews, some are going to be based on photos, and some were probably even written by someone who has never actually stepped foot inside of any of those venues that they are providing on that list. Today is different. As a wedding officiant, I performed multiple ceremonies at each of these three venues we're talking about today. And when you see the wedding photos throughout this episode, those aren't stock photos that I found online. Those are from the actual weddings that I personally officiated. I've seen these spaces full of guests. I've worked with their on-site venue teams, and I've stood at the altar of these locations while couples experienced one of the biggest moments of their lives. So, if you are planning an Arizona wedding, here are 3 Phoenix area venues that I genuinely love and 3 very different reasons that you might want to take a tour.
You're listening to the Houses and Spouses podcast with Ryan Hamilton. Ryan Hamilton is a real estate agent with Good Oak Real Estate and the heart behind the I Do Guru, helping people build strong foundations, both in their homes and in their marriages. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to the Houses and Spouses podcast with Ryan Hamilton. I, of course, Ryan Hamilton, local real estate agent with Good Oak Real Estate here in the Phoenix and Tucson areas, and wedding officiant with the I Do Guru. And today we're talking about 3 of my favorite wedding venues in the Phoenix area. Okay, we're going to talk about the Windmill Winery in Florence. Yes, some would argue that Florence isn't Phoenix area, but for the sake of today's episode, it is. We're going to talk about Soho 63 in downtown Chandler, my hometown, and we're going to talk about Villa Siena in Gilbert. This is not a paid advertisement. None of these venues contacted me or even know that I'm making this episode ahead of time. They didn't buy their way onto this list or anything like that. I've simply officiated multiple weddings at all 3 of these venues, and each one offers something very different. But first, you know how we do it. We cannot start this podcast without a dad joke. We would not be able to go any further. So, why did the bride and groom choose a venue that had really, really good Wi-Fi? Because they wanted to start their marriage with a strong connection. Okay, let's visit some wedding venues. All right, let's begin with the Windmill Winery in Florence. And yes, I acknowledge Florence is a little outside of the Phoenix metro area, but this is one of those venues where the drive is part of the trade-off that you're making. You leave behind the traditional ballroom or country club atmosphere and arrive somewhere that genuinely feels like a destination. The Windmill Winery offers 2 distinct wedding experiences, the barn and the lake house. The barn delivers that rustic Arizona wedding atmosphere, while the lake house provides something completely different: water, greenery, and a ceremony setting that feels far removed from the desert that surrounds the entire venue. What I love about the Windmill Winery is that it doesn't look or feel like Arizona in the way that most people expect. When you think of Florence, you probably aren't picturing a lakeside ceremony surrounded by mature trees and greenery. But the element of surprise is what makes this venue truly, truly memorable. Now, I've officiated more than one wedding at the Windmill Winery, including Sarah and Justin's, the one that you're seeing in photos right now. They were kind enough to send me these pictures, along with just a quick quote about what they loved about the venue. So they said, "It felt like a little oasis inside the desert. It doesn't look like all the other typical Arizona venues." And that's exactly it. The Windmill Winery has its own identity. You aren't walking into another version of the same ballroom that you just toured 3 days earlier. So whenever I officiate a wedding there, it feels like guests have been transported somewhere else for the evening. So if you want something rustic, scenic, and a little bit removed from the city, the Windmill Winery should absolutely be on your list. All right, venue number 2. We're going to talk about Soho 63, located right in the heart of downtown Chandler. This one's got a completely different personality. Soho 63 is a modern, urban, and incredibly flexible wedding venue. It has several distinct indoor and outdoor areas, allowing different parts of the weddings to happen in different spaces. They've got the Tribeca Terrace, Bricks on Boston, to name a couple. And each of these spaces has its own character, but everything still feels connected. From the perspective of someone working the wedding as a wedding officiant, one of Soho 63's biggest strength is actually that flow. Guests can move from ceremony to cocktail hour and then into the reception area while the staff works behind the scenes to make sure that this is all happening seamlessly. The evening progresses naturally instead of everyone standing around with a drink, wondering where the hell they're supposed to go next. But I would say the greatest advantage that Soho 63 has actually extends beyond the venue itself. It's its location. It's in downtown Chandler. I've officiated multiple weddings here, including Brandon and Kelly's wedding, the one that's featured in these photos. They loved that their out-of-town guests had several choices for lodging and food and could walk between those places and the wedding venue itself. In their words, it was truly hassle-free. They also described Soho 63 staff as available, accommodating, and friendly from the beginning of the planning process all the way through to their wedding day. That perspective matters because couples don't experience a venue for only 5 or 6 hours when their guests are there for their ceremony. They experience through months of questioning, through the decision making process, through the planning process. They need a venue that's going to be there for them for the long haul. A beautiful room is great, but you also want people who answer the damn phone when you need them, okay? So again, I've worked multiple weddings here, and it's one of those venues that can feel completely different from one wedding to the next. So if you want something modern, centrally located, and highly customizable, especially if you have guests coming in from out of town, put Soho 63 on your list. The photos that you're seeing are from Brandon and Kelly's wedding were captured by Haley and Ricky Photo and Film, and I'll include their information in the show notes. All right, venue number 3, Villa Siena in Gilbert. So if the Windmill Winery is rustic and Soho 63 is modern, then Villa Siena is pure old world romance. The property was designed to create the feeling of an Italian villa. It has stonework, arched doorways, courtyards, fountains, and the kind of architecture that makes wedding photos look like the couple traveled to Tuscany, even though everyone can still be home in Gilbert, at their home in Gilbert before midnight. The private courtyard offers a beautiful outdoor ceremony setting surrounded by the architecture of the property. For receptions, their grand ballroom can accommodate up to 250 guests, and then they also offer a smaller banquet hall for gatherings of up to 100 people. What I especially like about Villa Siena is that it creates a sense of occasion before the ceremony even begins. Guests walk through the entrance and immediately feel that they've arrived somewhere special. It's formal without feeling like a standard hotel ballroom. And because the property has so much built-in character already, couples don't have to bring in a truckload of decorations just to give the venue a little bit of flavor and a little bit of personality. So I've officiated multiple weddings here. So my recommendation isn't based solely on its architecture or what looks good in an online gallery. I've stood in the courtyard with real couples, real guests, and real wedding day nerves. And I've watched the setting help create ceremonies that feel intimate and they feel special, even with a larger guest list. From a photography perspective, there are also backdrops throughout the property. So you aren't relying on one photogenic corner and hoping another wedding party doesn't get there first. If you want an elegant, romantic wedding with a European feel, Villa Siena is absolutely worth touring. So, those are 3 of my favorites. Which one is best? That's actually the wrong question. The better question is, which one of these venues, and which venue in general, feels the most like the 2 of you? If you want a rustic scenery and a destination feel, tour the Windmill Winery. If you want modern flexibility in the middle of downtown Chandler, tour Soho 63. And if you want elegant architecture and old world romance, go check out Villa Siena in Gilbert. Pictures will help you narrow that list, but they won't tell you how a venue feels with 150 people inside it. Pictures won't show you how guests move from ceremony to cocktail hour, and they definitely won't tell you how the venue team responds when inevitably something fails to go exactly according to plan. Because something will. It's a wedding. Someone will be late. Something will be forgotten. And at least one family member will suddenly develop a very strong opinion about a decision that you made and finalized 6 months ago. That's why you should tour the venue, ask the questions, and pay attention to more than the pretty ceremony backdrop. So those are 3 of my favorite Phoenix area wedding venues based on my own experience actually officiating multiple weddings at each of them. And the couples featured throughout this episode came from weddings that I personally had the privilege and honor of officiating. So big shout out and thank you to Brandon and Kelly and to Sarah and Justin for sharing your experiences. And thank you to Haley and Ricky Photo and Film for their beautiful photographs from Brandon and Kelly's wedding at Soho 63. I'll include the links to the Windmill Winery, Soho 63, and Villa Siena in the show notes along with their social media accounts. If you are planning your wedding and still need someone to create and perform a ceremony that actually sounds like the 2 of you, check me out. Go to idoguru.com. And if you know someone who recently got engaged, send them this episode. This may help them save a little bit of time and a little bit of stress. So, I'm Ryan Hamilton. This has been another episode of the Houses and Spouses podcast. Thank you for listening. We will be back on the next one.
This has been the Houses and Spouses podcast with Ryan Hamilton. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone who needs it. For real estate help or a wedding ceremony crafted with care, connect with Ryan online. See you next week.